Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Desiree Sampson, and I'm a Business Operations Manager with SCRA, working with academic innovations and industry solutions. Today's presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to all registrants later today. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A chat. Our speaker today is Jennifer Oladipo, founder of Jenno Co., an SCRA resource partner and experienced communications pro. Jennifer is an award-winning journalist. She previously headed public relations for a global technology company and develops creative and impactful content for companies in life sciences, IT, and other tech business services and the arts. Jennifer was founding executive editor of Orange Whip, a multimedia storytelling and resource platform for small and early stage founders. She remains engaged as a writer for national and international publications focused on science and technology sectors. Everyone, please let's welcome Jennifer.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing. And I'm going to push a little button and hopefully it just does it like that. Okay, great. So I'm really excited to do this topic. This is pretty much coming out of something I've been hearing for years. And a lot of times it's just an offhanded comment that's maybe not exactly front of mind, but there's a lot of fear around, especially, this obviously is geared for SCRA type companies. So technical, science-based companies like that, a lot of fear around wanting to talk about what you're doing, but being nervous about the risks involved with that. So this is just an attempt to try and clarify some thinking around that and hopefully ease some of the fear and give you some ideas about what you can do. So we'll jump right in. I've got a few quick questions at the beginning and then for you in the audience, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments at the end. So I think they asked that you put those in the Q&A if you have any comments, and we'll get to those at the end. So first, we're gonna talk about just, why even bother to get into what you're doing and what's going on with your company in a way that may feel risky, what you can say, what to keep to yourselves. I'll go through some examples, and these are examples of work that I've worked on. So in the questions, you may have a little more detail that you want to get into about that. I'll be able to give you that. And then obviously questions, comments, and crowd wisdom. So, I know there are a lot of smart people on the call today, a lot of experienced people. So if you have something to add, please share. It only just helps everybody else. So the first of three questions, just to get a sense of who's in here, since I can't see you all, how many years have you been in business? And really just trying to get a spread of where you might be with your audience. We'll just give that a few seconds, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 7. 8 to 14 or 15 or more years. Okay, it looks like it's a pretty even spread. About 30% in the first 3 years, in the 8 to 14 and 15 plus range, and then 17% in the 4 to 7 year range. So we got people across the board. Cool. That's actually not surprising though, because it's a question that comes up regardless of how old or new your company is in this space. So then who are your customers and clients? Again, just to get a sense of what I might be thinking about when I'm saying, and so we can all know who else is kind of having these challenges: B2B, B2C, or a little bit of both business to business and business to consumer. A few seconds to answer that. Okay. Survey says mostly B2B, and the next is we just got a handful of B2C companies on here. And then we've got just broadly speaking, this isn't, very scientific or anything, but oh, that question got split up kind of wrong, but it's SaaS or tech that's not SaaS is what the second question is supposed to be. And then the third option is life science, engineering. Are you not even in business at all? Do you have some academics on the call, or is it something else entirely? So that's SaaS, tech that's not SaaS, life science, engineering, academia, or something else. And okay, a lot of something else. That's interesting. Yeah, this is just a bigger mix. It's just 13% SaaS, 16% each life science and tech that's not SaaS, 9% engineering and academia each, and 38% something else. Okay, so we got a mixed crowd. Cool. That's helpful to know. That's me. They did a great intro at the beginning. I think the thing that's most important to know is where I'm coming at this from. So why the secret sauce thing? I've seen it from the angle as a business journalist, where I'm kind of being gate kept on the outside, also as a marketer, and also as a PR person who's trying to work on that messaging, get it pushed out, but also dealing with some of the internal situations, politics, I guess, of how to do, negotiate messaging that's going to go out into the public. So let's get right into it. Why should we say anything? Why should you even get near anything that's even remotely approaching your secret sauce? And the reason is because it's great marketing. We're trying to make money. We're trying to reach customers and connect with people. And when you can get closer to what it is you do that you would consider your secret sauce, that helps people understand you better. It helps strengthen your positioning. It's just really what it takes to get above the noise. There's so much going on in the world. You don't have very much time to grab people's attention. You don't have very much leeway in their minds for them to remember what it is you said when you got their attention. And a lot of folks on here are going to have those really long sales cycles where you have to keep getting in touch with and educating people. So whatever you're calling your secret sauce, I know we had a spread of types of businesses here, but whatever it is that brought you to the call today that you're struggling with figuring out how to talk about, that is probably some of the most important stuff that you want to get as close to as possible sharing. So, okay, let's say you're convinced. Okay, yes, we got to do this. We've been too quiet. We've got to pivot. We've got to rebrand. We've got something going on, and we need to start talking more about who we are and what we do in more specific ways. But what are the things that you should say to actually make that happen? Here is my thinking about some of the stuff that is really helpful to share, and just like how to get around it, right? So as we're going through this list, just pretty much think about all these different ways that you can point to your secret sauce, talk around it, sort of shed a little light near it without actually divulging anything that's going to be problematic. So one of the biggest things you can do, and I have technology here because this was kind of set up assuming that we'd have more tech-based companies with SCRA. I'm glad to see a big spread. But perspectives on your technology or your science or whatever it is you do, right? The how we do it. So everyone else is zigging. This is why we zag. Everyone else is putting all their attention here, but this is where we're putting our attention in terms of how exactly we execute or how we process. Everyone else is using 60-watt bulbs, or we're using 40-watt bulbs, and here's why. So really kind of anything that can talk about the technology or the science of what you're doing without the specifics of exactly how you do it. Especially here is where you want to talk about differentiators. What are we doing that's different? As many as you have. I mean, sometimes, some of our products or services aren't necessarily differentiated in any specific way, then maybe that's not the best thing for you. But what you can do, and what everyone can do, is zoom out a little bit and talk about perspectives on the industry. So this is where, again, you want to get niche, okay, and talk about what is going on in your industry. And that's a lot of different things that could make sense for you. So for instance, obviously, you could talk about what's being funded in your industry. How is the money moving? You're not necessarily talking about your own company, but you're talking about your perspectives on that. You can talk about your perspectives on the relationships that are happening in your industry, the relationships between customers and you and your peers. How are you relating to each other? Are there shifts that are happening that people need to be aware of? Are there shifts that you're seeing that you're being responsive to? Are there needs in your industry that you want to see filled and you have ideas about how they need to be filled? So just perspectives. Again, what's making it yours and not just a news release or a news story or something like that, is what do you have to do differently? And when you're thinking about the perspectives, think about how you can sort of point to what you do without exactly giving any details about what you do. Digging into your customer's world. That's another thing that you can do. So by talking about the minutia of what your potential customers and clients are dealing with day to day and how what you do fits into that minutia, again, you're giving really specifics. You're helping people understand, okay, this is what we are. This is what we do. That's also a little bit of a flex. I'm going to keep using that word a lot, but it's a flex to say, and we know you really well. We understand who you are. A lot of times this is something that you could be talking about with materials that they're going to engage with before they ever talk to you, but also when you're on sales situations and that kind of thing. So digging into your customer's world, but showing that you know the day-to-day, the minutia, the things that are on their minds, their processes, that's something that you can communicate about, and how, again, what you're doing fits into that. And, by the way, I'm kind of doing that today. So I'm, heard so many people either in direct comments or offhanded comments say, gosh, but how do we do this? Or I'm worried about that, or let's stay away from that, or the struggles around it, because that's just something that is a part and parcel of them getting their work done, getting their job done, accomplishing their goals. So the more you can get into that and how what you do fits into that, that's a great way to talk about your secret sauce without actually giving away anything that's too valuable. Documented research. So for those of you on the call who are technical or science-based, you're going to probably be dealing with a lot of research. Some of it may be your own. And so this would be that research that you've done in the course of product development. Maybe that's or product testing that you've had to either submit to peer-reviewed journals, or maybe it was stuff that was part of your due diligence or regulatory process that's out there in the world, right? But your average customer is not necessarily going to come across it. Well, you can lean on that and you can dig into it, help people understand it. Well, what exactly does this difference make? Maybe your audience is technical or not, but digging into that research that you've done in the development of your product or services is really, really powerful. Or if you're not a company that needs or has done that kind of research, you can dig into the general research on that topic. Again, positioning yourself as someone who understands and talking about in the body of research that's out there, what's the state of the art right now? What are the researchers on the more academic side finding about this? And again, where does our product or service fit into that or not fit into that? Are we outliers? Are we doing something differently? Are we ahead of the game? We were doing this 5 years ago, but we've moved on from this discussion. Your team's expertise. This is another one that so many people anybody can dig into this. And so many people, you're kind of seeing a little bit more. I think this is kind of maybe due to the talent wars. You're seeing more faces up in front of the company. So it's not just your CEOs and those people talking, and you see more faces, but really hearing more voices from those people is really, really important. Probably you have the best people that you could get on your team. They're probably really smart and talented and very close to whatever it is you do and however it is you do it. So your expertise is maybe your technical people, but also your people who are customer facing, your customer relations people, even if they are not necessarily folks who are, comfortable being front and center or just, have that skill set in communicating that way. You can still mine them for information and put that out there. Somewhat related to that you can talk about is the process by which you gained your expertise. So if you've got a really interesting proprietary technology, or you've got a really interesting sort of theory or intellectual mindset that shapes the way you do your work, talking about how you came to that is a great way to make people feel like they're getting a deeper understanding of your secret sauce. And that can be talking about your customer survey process and really getting into it. Okay, these are the questions that we wanted to ask our customers. This is why we were asking those questions. This is this is the responses we got. This is what we thought about the responses, that kind of thing. Or this was our research process. And again, it's getting into, well, why did we take this route to get our information or expertise? And what did we think about what we found? And so it's letting people get into your thinking, and that's going to be a differentiator, hopefully. And then this last bit, competitive advantage relationships. What I mean by that is the relationships that you have as a company that are a competitive advantage for you. There's a lot of times people wanting to be really guarded about maybe their partnerships or supply chain relationships, because, well, we don't want people to know that we're getting our components from here, or, this is who we're working with, and wanting to keep a lot of stuff under the hood. Well, I would suggest just taking a step back and questioning that and seeing, are any of those relationships, are there ways that we can actually bring those to light and talk about them that actually show, wait, we're a better partner for you because we have better partners. So an example is if you have a contract research organization or a contract manufacturer, maybe you don't necessarily, or definitely, you don't want to talk about the details of the work that they're doing for you, any kind of specifics. And the next slide will be about that. But you want to talk about how you're working together, how you all are doing, attacking problems or addressing issues, and maybe the depth and wealth of their knowledge and expertise. Because if you're partnering with people who are really good at what they do to help you do what you do, guess what? You get to bask in that glow. You get to show your customers and your audience, look, not only are we saying that we're really good at what we do, but this is a proof point. We're backing it up. We're partnering with the best of the best that are part of our ecosystem in order to bring to you what we're doing. So any of those relationships that are competitive advantage, think about how you can bring those to light and use them to show who you are and what you do, again, without too many specifics. So, okay, wow, cool. We have a lot to share, but maybe it still feels risky. And so what do you not say? This part's a lot easier, I think. And my thinking is, for the most part, most folks are overly cautious about, and this is a very general idea, but are overly cautious about what's actually going to be risky. And it's really understandable why that is. So just keep that in mind, that you might have a bias toward too much caution. So what do you want to keep to yourself, though? Anything that is repeatable competitive advantages. So basically anything that folks can take and duplicate and copy with relative ease and do what you do or do what you do better. Very specifically, your formulas, we're talking about general trade secrets. So any formulas, codes, if you're, your product design, specs, those kinds of things. Anything specific about your processes that are really truly unique to your company, no need to share those. That's not going to get you anywhere but exposed to folks who you don't necessarily want to know what's going on. And then another really easy way to tell, should we, be talking about this in our marketing or in our public speaking or out in public? Is it something that you had to call, if you're going to talk about it, you're calling a meeting and it's only your executives who are in that meeting, not even, management level folks or anyone else in the organization. If it's that kind of information that when you're talking about it, you only talk about it with a very select few people within your own organization, then it is definitely not something that you want out there. Talking, things like really significant strategic moves, plans that are coming down the road. Obviously, you don't want that. Similarly, anything that you are really only talking about with your legal team, that's not something that you want out there. So if it's a potential liability issue from that standpoint, then no, you don't want to be using that to try to promote your business, even if it feels like it's kind of juicy or sexy or interesting. Stay away from that. I will say one thing about legal teams, though, especially working, on the PR side of things, they can sometimes, and this was, my, I think many of my peers would agree, just kind of overstep in terms of, redacting. You're trying to communicate something that's interesting to people. Sometimes you send it to legal, no apologies. I appreciate any legal people who are on the call. But, sometimes you send it to legal and you just get all these redactions that make it really hard to communicate something in like a creative and engaging way. So what I would say in those situations is maybe ask, what exactly is it about this that is a problem? So like, one example is I had a, client who we could never use the word partner when they were some of those competitive advantage relationships that I was talking about, couldn't use the word partner. Why? Because that's an actual legal fiscal relationship if you're using that in a press release, even though the word partner is like their preferred language of choice when they're, colloquially talking, and even in the marketing materials, but in a press release for a publicly traded company, can't say that, means something different. So it wasn't the problem wasn't the idea of partnership, it was the way things were phrased. So if you're running into any legal concerns about something you want to share, just dig in a little bit and figure out why that is, because it may not be the nature of the material, it might just actually be the wording, and they're just going to go ahead and redline it and not really get into all of that. That's, your job and your communications people's job. And one of the things that helps make this really easy is to create a messaging platform. So there's no need to have to, rethink these issues. What can we say and what can we not say, and renegotiate that all the time and have a bunch of conversations around it all the time. Just write it down. So you have a messaging platform that's like, what conversations do we want to own? And that's actually one of the most important things about deciding what to say and what not to say is the why of it. Like, why are we trying to communicate about this? And you'll see some examples of that. But what is the thing that we're even trying to accomplish? What conversations do we want to own? What positioning do we want to have? Where specifically do we want to show leadership or depth or anything like that? And you want to write that down, have a plan, quarterly, half a year, annual, whatever it is that makes sense for your organization. And then what do we talk about then? What are those things that we share? And what are the things that are off the table when we're having those communications? And it's pretty much as simple as that. I mean, so if it's something that you have to keep close to your chest within your organization, it doesn't leave your organization. Legal issues, specs, coding, lines of code, that kind of thing, stay away from that. And anything outside of that is worth considering, I would say. So the simplest way to even start thinking about all of this and categorizing these things is, will it cost you money or will it make you money? If we talk about factor X, will this cost us money potentially, or will it make us money potentially? So I'm going to skip back a couple of slides here. If you're talking about industry perspectives, or you're talking about the minutia of your customer's world, is that going to cost you? Is there a potential cost there where someone can take that information and actually, reach your customers or something like that in a way, or deliver the service or something like that in the way that you would, or even you talking about your focus groups or your thinking around how you gained your expertise? Is that going to cost you money? Well, repeatable advantages, formulas and codes, strategic plans, would that cost you money or make you money if it were out in the public? Pretty simple, but it's a really super helpful framework to start with, just even, almost like a pros and cons list when you're trying to evaluate, and then digging a little deeper in some of those other ways we talked about. So the fun thing is, okay, you're like, yay, wow, we can talk about all kinds of things. We got blogs for days. What are some examples of how to do this? So I'm about to share half a dozen examples, and I don't have permission to share them in a public forum like this, but I'll have my contact info at the end. And if there's something here that looks like your company or your business, or you just want a little more detail about how that worked because it seems like a fit for you, that's fine. Just please reach out. But for these purposes, all this stuff is pretty anonymous. So here we have a global medical device company. If you were to guess one of the top three, you have a 1 in 3 chance of being right. So what were we doing? What was the reason for the messaging or the marketing and the activities that we were doing? There's a legacy product that we're showing to a new audience. And so, meaning specifically here, it's a medical device that's used a lot in, one part of the hospital, on the geriatric floor, say, and now they're trying to sell it to the folks in trauma. And what did we do? What was that stuff that we leaned into, like I referred to on the earlier slide? Leaned into the published research, the research on how that technology was being used and how it was impacting people. Also the customers world, right? So our customers, in this case, they're higher level clinicians who are like management level, that's the buyer. But in their world, what do they want? They want to have the best level of care possible. And how do they do that? By having the best experience possible for their clinicians, their nurses and doctors that are on the floor. Dealing with patients. A lot of them were those people. So when we were creating the different content, it was blogs, videos, social media, stuff like that. We were digging into that. And when I say minutia, I mean minutia of how they're moving around in the space, what they're thinking about, all the other concerns that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and how this technology helps or hurts, well, not hurts, but helps in those situations, and how it can hurt if it's not as good as, what we were trying to sell. An identity and access management company. So that's your basically, your software behind the badge systems and all those kinds of things, but also your processes of like onboarding people and getting them, whatever kind of security clearance they need to have in your organization. So why were we communicating? Well, there's a pretty small, I say a small sales pool here. It's really more like a tight sales pool. So it's a very specific enterprise level client, and that client has a pretty tight community. And so, it's sort of like when you're in, but it's really, really hard to get in. Also, the actual peer pool was pretty small, and my client, newer, smaller. So really having to position themselves. And what did we do? Industry perspectives, right? They had some really interesting ideas about what was broken in the industry where their client industry was, and then also what was broken about the way identity and access management folks like themselves were dealing with that. And that was a pretty simple collaborative thing. Actually, the partner relationships were also a part of this, because we did some trade media contributed articles, and we did those in partnership with some industry folks. So that was actually a mix of a few different things where we leveraged that kind of information to say, okay, this is how we work, but we never talked about the specifics of their software or the specifics of their technologies. Then we have a security key company. You've used these. It's like a how to passwords into your devices and things like that. Actually, not passwords, and that was one of the things that we were talking about. So why? A legacy product, again, a new audience. In this case, the interest was in breaking into life science customer base that was new to them. And so then we dug into the customer's world. How are people using this technology every day? What's frustrating about it? What doesn't work? Also, a lot of industry perspectives. So in this case, we were talking about, okay, here's the state of where the technology, here's the, security issues that are out there. Here's the next phase of the technology that everybody's talking about. We're at step 2 now, we're at phase 2 as an industry, but as a company, we're at step 4, moving on to phase 5. And that was where we talked about, okay, so there was the ability there to take a broader conversation about what's happening in the industry, but to differentiate about like, well, here's how our technology is different. Do I know exactly what's in the code or what's in the hardware that made it different? No. So no one can take that information and really do anything with it at a competitor company. But what we could do was talk about the differentiators in the context of the industry and be very specific about how it was different, why that difference is better, why we felt like the industry is going to move in that direction. And this was largely for sales material. So this was going to be, one-on-one conversations, but like decks that that once they're sent to a specific person, you don't control your sales deck anymore. It's just like out there in the world. And then I think this is the last one, is a genetic and epigenetic sequencing company. And so what was the communication need there? They had done a complete rebrand, name change, and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that we leaned on really heavily there was published research. In this case, it was their own research about their process. And so this is published in peer-to-peer journals. Anyone could pick it up and, dig through it if they wanted to. Even though their customer base was a technical customer base, they're selling to scientists. They're not selling to necessarily geneticists. So they're not people who actually maybe even understand how genetic sequencing works. They just understand that they need good sequencing in order to accomplish whatever it is that they're doing in their branch of science. And so what we did was took the research and made it understandable for folks and showed, okay, this is what our research does that we had to prove, but this is what it actually means for you as you're developing, cures for cancer or genetic tests or whatever it is that you're working on, pharmaceuticals, whatever it is. And that's what we did, taking that research that's already out there and making it relatable and showing, okay, this is what this really means for you as a potential buyer. And that was, came out in website and videos. Oh, nope, got two more. Okay. This one was really fun. And a one where it was fun for me because they were willing to take a little bit of a risk. So this AI comment analysis, again, this was a sort of not a new product. It wasn't like a new product launch, but it was a new application for a product. So they have, a machine learning software and had done some new training to their algorithms so that they could be used in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, right? So they had been working with other types of clients and, what the software does is you can take comments from all kinds of places, read them super fast. I mean, actually, this is not that long ago, but pre the ChatGPT explosion. So we'd probably have to do it differently now because it was just harder for people to understand, for the average person to understand exactly what we mean by, being able to take a bunch of information and spit something back out to you that quickly. Anyway, we're moving into the DEI space. So talking about the customer's world. Now you've got this very technical and foreign to most people machine learning situation at that time. So we really dug into the customer's world. You're having to understand, okay, like if I am the diversity and inclusion person at my organization, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to solve? What are the challenges I'm having getting the information? What are the challenges I'm having like validating my position at the company? Maybe there were a lot of new positions at that time. So we were really digging into that. Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And what is the space you're trying to do into it? And how does this machine learning actually help you on multiple levels? But then I also was able to convince them to address the fact that, okay, these are people who are dealing with diversity and inclusion. If they don't understand your technology, they may already have some ideas about it, because there's also already been some conversations about biases in algorithms and how they can be baked in. So one of the things we talked about, and this was a great differentiator, was the team behind, and not like specific names, but the types of peoples and the roles and the types of expertise that went into training the language model. So that people could see, oh, okay, this is, an appropriately diverse team of people who are creating this technology that you're then trying to sell to me to help address diversity issues in my organization. So that was one where we peeled back the onion just a little bit. We didn't talk any specifics about what were the actual terms and how are they categorized, but we talked about the thinking around, okay, why do we were even able to say, basically, how do we define diversity? Like, what do we consider diversity? Well, we have this, A, B, C, D, and E, different types of people putting input in, advising and forming and that kind of stuff. And, that was for just a digital white paper. Last example here is for a microfluidics company. And what they were trying to do, there wasn't any specific new product or launch or anything, but it was new positioning. So we were trying to change the way change their relationship to the customers, right? So what they wanted was, instead of, okay, I've built my whatever device, and now it's time for me to go start buying components, and I'm going to go to my, fluidics and optics company. They wanted to be earlier in on the conversation and like, no, when you're actually thinking about designing something, bring us to the table then, because we've worked with so many different companies. We know what's going on with different materials, different fluids, different things that you can use. We know so much that we can inform your design and help you improve it with whatever it is you're wanting to do way before you ever get to the point that you're ready to actually start buying and building and prototyping what you're doing. So that's what we were trying to do there. And in that case, we dug into the customer's world, and this was pretty cool. We did a quiz, right? So they did some research to find out, okay, what are the who are the people inside the organization? Again, digging into their world. There's some people in the organization who are like, yeah, we want to innovate. And these are all like, suppose they're innovation economy companies, but the proclivity toward innovation inside each company is not necessarily universal. So there's some people who are like, this is the way we've done it, and we're going to keep doing it that way. There are other people who are like, oh man, there's got to be better ways to do this. I'm open to those conversations. I want to hear what's going on from, our vendor. I want to hear from our vendors. I'm open to that. So we just created this quiz where basically there were, identified 4 different kinds of people. I gave them some cute names. They all feel good names, but the idea was to help them identify sort of where they were on that spectrum, and then how to nudge them into a little bit more openness toward having those conversations. So hopefully those examples are, diverse enough. And if anybody has any questions or something like that seems like, oh, okay, this is kind of like us, happy to talk more about that. We're going to open it up for questions in just a sec, but just to recap, I hope you're excited. I hope you're feeling like, okay, it's actually not that big a deal to talk about what we're doing and get pretty close without getting very specific. Nail down your what subjects are off limits. That's that messaging platform that I was talking about. Give it that money test. Is sharing this information going to make us money, or is it going to cost us money in a realistic way? Considering that in a realistic and logical way, not just sort of getting caught up in too much fear. Checking out other examples, and just go forth without fear. Be smart and measure things and plan, but there's no reason to be afraid. If you've got a really interesting company with interesting folks and you're really making an impact in your customers' lives, then you shouldn't be afraid to talk about that. So yeah, we can go ahead and do we have any questions, Desiree?
Let's see. Before we wrap up, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Oh, wow.
No, we don't have any, but that was great, Jennifer. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
A lot of good information. So this is just another reminder that today's presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to all registrants later today. Please complete the survey after the webinar commences. Also, be on the lookout for upcoming SCRA webinars, which can be found on the SCRA website under Get Support. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, I do. No.
We got one.
No, that was just a comment.
Well done.
Thank you, Jorge. I appreciate the shout out.
All right, you guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.